Hello and welcome back to Radio Free Urbanism, a podcast about urbanism and stuff. My name is Nick Laporte, and today we got some cool stuff. We're without Alex anymore. He's no longer a regular host on the show, but I'm here. Next week we'll have Sully, but today we do have, you know him, you love him, Ethan Meyers.
Welcome back, everybody. It's great to be back here. Unfortunately, a little bit Alex-less, but we do have a guest today.
We do. This is Clarence. And if you don't know Clarence, he's someone who's I've been a fan of for quite a while, and you might know him as Street Film. So Clarence, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's very exciting to be on here. And I always love being live or being featured as a guest because I'm always like, that's something when my kid gets older, he can watch and understand more about what I was trying to do.
That's what
I do as many of these things as I can, you know.
You can be in front of the camera instead of always behind it, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to get into what you're doing, what you have been doing for quite a long time. But before that, we got to ask Ethan, what's your update?
Yes, so my update is from a wonderful little story that we had last week. As you heard, the Amtrak Horizon cars were completely taken out of the Amtrak fleet, and that unfortunately gutted a lot of service on regional routes, one of them being the Cascades. Now, this is probably the most important route that was majorly affected by this, as it was limited to one train a day having any sort of service, and every other run of the day had to be replaced with buses. Now, there is a little bit of an update. Amtrak has sent some of their Amfleet cars from the East Coast to the West Coast, so now there is another train that is running during the week with actual passenger cars instead of a bus substitute. So service is starting to slowly return back to a somewhat normal form of service on the Cascades. Hopefully this picks up, especially for some of the other Amtrak routes, because it's just a major issue that we've been dealing with in terms of Amtrak for the past week and a half now.
When you say sends, does that just mean they take 10 trains and somebody drives them across country and
so what they do is they take
wild.
the Amfleet train cars and they hook them up to one of their long distance trains, and then they just send them across the country. So that's how they do their shipping. They do them just straight up by sending them with existing trains.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Does anybody try to find them? Any train spotters?
So someone found them out in Montana when they were moving it. I can't remember where the footage was. I think I found it on Instagram, but they were actually moving, I think it was 8 Amfleets with that. So expect for more service to return to the Cascades and maybe some shorter trains than some of the other regional services.
That's wicked. That's good to hear. Yeah. Because after last week, we talked about the certain cars getting all rusty and not being able to be in service anymore, right?
Yeah, the Horizons. They're not structurally sound anymore, according to Amtrak.
Well, it's good to see at least something's moving over there.
Definitely. So, also, another mild update. Sorry to cut you off, Nick.
Yeah,
I'm using a new camera. I'm sure the audience may have noticed that, but I am using a new camera.
Yeah, especially for those listening, you should know for sure. Ethan's got a new camera. It's looking great.
Yes, this is true.
It does look good. Well, it's funny. I'm getting a brand new computer. Right, this is 7 years old, which is for what I do.
Ancient.
Yeah, it is for what I do. But I've stuck by it for a long time. But I'm getting a new computer in the next few days, and I'm very excited. So my webcam will probably be a lot better than what you're seeing right now.
We'll have to have you back on just for the webcams. We'll see you clearly. Yeah, you're going to enjoy that. Well, speaking of that, I'm sure you do lots of work on the computer. I know I do when I'm editing stuff. It takes a lot of time, but I want to talk about that. So for anybody who doesn't know you, can you kind of give us the first, the 30-second elevator pitch? Who is Clarence and what is Street Films?
Well, Street Films it's just me now. It used to, a long time ago, it was 3 of us. But I've done 1,111 films, amazingly. Today is a very big numerical milestone, about all kinds of things that are transit, trains, pedestrianism, urbanism, biking, walking, cities, density, green issues. So I've been doing this since, in one form or another, since the very late 90s when I had a cable access show. I started out a show called Bike TV. And eventually I did some stuff on my own. And then by the time 2005 rolled around, I became part of a funded group. and my part through Open Plans, and I was street films. And this actually is what you're showing right now is the 1,111th street film, and it's about Ghent, Belgium, and about how they basically kicked cars out of the city center. So it makes bicycling and walking really nice, and the city itself isn't filled with tons of bike lanes or protected bike lanes or things. It's just, as you can see here, there's a few nice intersections they have where bicycles rule, but you can go anywhere you want because there's not a lot of cars in the city center anyway. So it's very exciting to make this reach. The 1,000 was the milestone I reached a couple of years ago, and I thought 1,111 was going to be cool. And I don't know, I'll probably finish up around 1,200, 1,250 by the time I retire.
Wow. So you're like, who is it? Tarantino. He's got like a number.
Yeah.
He's got a set number. He's going to be done. And you've done the same thing for yourself, but just a much higher number.
Isn't it only like 10? I think he has 10 or 12.
Yeah. So you've done way more already. And your bar is way higher. Tarantino, he's way down there. Like, come on. No, it's incredible. Yeah. I absolutely loved them, especially this from Ghent, because I think I was in Europe at the same time. This was the Velo City conference, right? That you went to.
Yes,
that's why you were there.
It was last year. I actually put up 5 other short films before this, and this was the baby I really wanted to get up there, the beautiful, really nice long film. And I just had so many projects jumping in front of it because, I couldn't just do Ghent, Belgium for 8 months, so I had to kick. All right, now I have other things to do. I got congestion pricing films. I got films about daylighting and other things. So that's why it kind of meandered and is only up 3 months before the next Velocity Conference 2025.
It's funny because I've had this experience where you could just post videos about the Netherlands and the cycling infrastructure there, and you'll get so many views. And as soon as you switch off that, it's like, as people are like, no, I'm not interested anymore. You could probably stay on that if that was your goal. Obviously, that's not your main goal.
Well, I think that's my comrade over there, Bicycle Dutch Mark Wagenborough. He and I basically were the number 1 and number 2 guys doing videos for 10, 12, 15 years. And I kept saying, when the heck are there going to be a lot more people? And then COVID hit and everything changed. Everything changed. Not just bikes, City Nerd, war on cars. There's just so much stuff happened once COVID hit. So, And this is some of a partial little screenshot of
taster. Yeah. It's incredible how much stuff you've made over the years. Honestly, it's unbelievable. But I have to ask you because you've created this incredibly huge library of content online, and it's streets from around the world. And for someone like me who often talks about these relatively niche topics and niche places within the scene of micromobility, like bike streets in the Netherlands, in the past I've talked about that and not had any of my own footage to do that with. Or even recently I talked about the Rhinewall pad, and you visited that bicycle highway between Arnhem and Eindhoven. It had footage of it.
Which was another Velo City conference.
Yeah. I was able to use your footage because you marked most of your content as Creative Commons. So first of all, I have to say thank you for that because it's been extremely helpful for me. But
I usually like to get people to tell me they're using it anyway, though. But
I always give you a credit in my videos. But second, it's what's inspired me to start my other channel, which is the Bike Lane Project, which is just no talking, nothing at all. It's just any places I've been to, kind of like what you've done. I just put up raw footage, Creative Commons for other people to use as well, because I think it's an incredible resource for people to have. So my question is, what is the reason that you mark this stuff as Creative Commons in the first place?
Well, I will say it's marked Creative Commons, but you're not supposed to edit it. That's how it's marked. But I do kind of am very liberal with when people do stuff, especially as long as it's not like a major motion picture or TV studio or somebody else using it. You're like, okay, whatever. So. But I always I'm a stickler because I'm an old timer. I'm a stickler. Like anybody, I use any of their footage, even if it says you can use my footage, I will still make sure I get them to know that I'm going to use it, and they say okay. But times have changed, things are different, and there's other countries where like places like the Netherlands, where their rules and laws are like they can do whatever they want with your their footage.
Really?
Really?
Yeah, there's other countries where you can't. I mean, I guess you could try to sue them or something, but like there are a lot of countries where they have different rules about the content. So
Well, that's same thing in Germany. Like if you're filming in the streets in Germany and you film somebody's license plate, like you're supposed to legally like block it out, blur it out, which here in BC is not a thing at all.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's nothing you can even glean from somebody's license plate here. I think in most of North America for as far as I know, but yeah, I've done you dirty.
There's other places like, I think even Paris is a little like this. You're supposed to really, in the United States, you could film anything. You're outdoors. You're not, indoors. You're not in a playground or something. But like, you could film anywhere you want. That's legal. But there's other countries where you're supposed to get permission for everybody that's in that shot, or they have like some kind of like. I think even Paris and France have some issues with like, you can't just go and shoot, or even though people do it all the time. But I think if somebody wanted to bring a lawsuit against you, there's all these Byzantine laws, and some countries are more strict than others.
It's tricky to go around it. Anyways, I wanted to say I did you dirty because I do credit you in any videos where I used the street films footage, but apparently I haven't gone far enough. So next time I'm going to let you know for whatever I'm working on. Hopefully so that maybe you can just share it too. Whatever I'm working on.
Well, the thing is, it's like, as long as somebody's not making money off of it, then, then the bar goes down real far.
Right.
It's like,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to start asking and then start selling it.
Yeah. I had the BBC use my footage without crediting me. I've had like, a lot of people send me stories that are done. They're like, did you let this person use your footage? Because I just noticed, I just watched your film. And now I had MSNBC use some footage of City Bike's debut that I shot, and they never credited me on screen or anything. And then I had a friend who knew somebody who worked there. And I said, what's happening here? And they were like, yeah, somebody effed up, but you're not going to hear it from them. So
yeah, that's amateur hour.
That really is.
I know.
I thought that was like rule one in the real big business, right?
I know.
That's
you got to
crazy.
credit at least. You got to.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's on screen while you're showing it, or at least at the very end, like contains footage from blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Ethan, you were going to say something?
No, I was just saying, like, reasonably, it is just to credit the person who did the footage, and I kind of even go through and credit each individual clip, which I feel like is something that's kind of fallen by the wayside with some creators. But it is essential to give people credit where credit is due.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I will say that crediting on screen each shot, that's going above and beyond these days. That really is. Glad to hear.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I've done that at least.
I will say I don't do that unless it's like a long string of something. Like if it's from Bicycle Dutch and I'm showing like a minute of footage, I'll put Bicycle Dutch at the first 5-10 seconds and then I'll take it down. But if I get permission to use footage from other people and it's, a shot here and there, then I'll just credit all at the end.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Especially it depends on the context and what you're working on for sure. So you've traveled all over the place, and I have to ask you, what is your favorite place that you've had the chance to visit, but not just your favorite place generally, but when it comes to the context of the streets, what's your favorite place?
I mean, it's a cheap answer, but it's like any city in the Netherlands is kind of like,
yeah.
But these days there are some cool contenders like Paris is great. Montreal is wonderful. Montreal may not have as fancy as the streets of Paris or the Netherlands or Ghent or Oslo or London, but you go there during the summer and you just stay. Like my family and I go every summer pretty much these days, and we'll go for like 4 or 5 days. And we have such a great time just walking around. There's just a certain wonderfulness about that city and the art and there's seesaws over there. Let's get on the seesaws and they have a lot more pedestrian space than they've ever had. They got a great mayor who unfortunately is retiring now. She's not pursuing another term. So I would say those are my favorite. I love Paris. We're going to back to Stockholm for a family trip and a week for spring break. And I've been there twice, but each time I've been there for only like 3 days, like not even like one time I was there for like 70 hours. And literally, like, I've never gotten to do anything fun. So when my family was looking somewhere to go, I said, well, I would love to go back there and actually go to the Viking Museum and do these really cool things. Because a lot of people are like, oh, you're so lucky you get to travel and stuff. It's like, I'm Mr. Efficiency. I shoot from the minute there's daylight until there's until the light is gone. And I just, sometimes I don't eat from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. and then I'm exhausted. Then, because when you're there, you got to get all the footage you need, and you don't want to go home and go, oh, I wish I would have skipped that meal and just shot somewhere. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy because it's one of those things where the grass seems greener. And a lot of people who look at content creators in general and be like, oh, it must be so nice. And it is, we have a lot of fun doing it. Like, I'm really happy making videos and I'm passionate about it. And that's one of the reasons why I do it. But it is a lot of work. They're like, oh, you went on a bike vacation in the Netherlands for 7 days and biked around. It's like, I did, but I had a plan, I had a schedule, I had to stop, film stuff and like be very focused on what I was doing and the end product that I wanted to make. But the amount of footage you get when, like, if I'm here in Vancouver doing a video about the local stuff, if I don't get something, I'll get on my bike and go get it. But I can't go back to the Netherlands after my trip and get something. You end up with just a pile of footage. It's crazy. So
sifting through it and finding what you're looking for is always, a fun challenge.
Yeah.
The nice thing is, there is a net. I know enough people, and there's a network of people like in Portland. I know one or two people. We're doing a video on low traffic neighborhoods, and there's a lot of things in Portland that they don't have LTNs as a defined thing, but you've got the group, the greenways, you've got the bike lanes, you've got parks, you've got these really cool things that we can use that footage to kind of describe what an LTN is. So, being able to count on people or trade footage with people is pretty awesome too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's creating that network between people is really, really handy. I've had the fortune of meeting a lot of other content creators online who've been willing to share some of their footage with me as well. Ethan, do you have any specific questions for Clarence? I've got a few more, but if you got any.
I've got one here. Clarence, you've been in this community for quite a long time. How has it been seeing it kind of grow and blossom over the past decade?
Well, I mean, there's so much. I mean, one thing I love to do is before and afters. I love to put films up showing what things look like before and after. And I go through sometimes my archives and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I have some footage of Second Avenue before they ever had a bike lane. And now in New York, we've gone through a striped lane, a protected lane. Now we have double wide protected lanes. So, it's really fun to watch that journey. And it's also really interesting, though, because the younger generation and new people, they want it now. They want everything now. They want it to be built out in a few years. And I'm old enough to know that, like, that doesn't happen. Not in the United States, not in North America. But it's really cool also to see. One thing I tried to do, and a lot of other people did, and used my films and such, is, you get into that game where it's like city versus city. Like, look what they're doing in Portland. And I think Portland's a great example. Portland was a place I went to often early on. San Francisco and the Bay Area as well. And then, in New York, we got our commissioner, Jack Sada Khan, and she started doing things. And, then it starts being like, oh, well, look what they're doing over there. We're going to bring that in here. And, and then, look what Netherlands is doing. Look what Bogota is doing. Look at what China is doing with BRT and high-speed rail. So there's this great competition, and that really helped kind of propel everything, I think, forward. That, like, hey, and now it's like we're in a weird, different area now because we're looking around at what's going on, and sometimes things are being, as things are being like Houston's had some bike lanes taken out. What are they doing in Toronto, right? They're doing some stuff in Toronto, maybe.
Oh, yeah. Doug Ford's getting in there, tearing up the bike lanes. Yep. There's a bike lash going on for sure.
We have people that want to do that here in Boston. They're getting rid of some bus lanes. They're getting rid of 2 bus lanes. So there's a lot of this. There's the war on cars, and now there's people that got mad that there's a war on cars and it's a term and it's a thing. So now they're like, we got to go back and we got to say, well, everybody's taking everything away from us drivers, when they shouldn't be thinking of that. So.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that later in the show. I've got a topic and something that I went and saw last night that we're going to definitely dig into the war on cars. But before the show, you did mention that you visited Portland quite a while ago, well before when it was way ahead as far as cycling infrastructure goes compared to New York City, your home. So I'm wondering, how do you think it is now, how it compares to New York City?
Let's see. We went to Portland was a little over a year and a half ago, maybe almost 2 years we were in Portland. And, I still think Portland does really good stuff. Portland also has a little bit of a budgetary issue there. So there's always this, like,
just a little,
what they want to do and what they can do. But the projects are still amazing. I mean, I just got to see the Earl Blumenauer Bridge, which was pretty cool. Not only for just the bridge, but for what they did on both ends of it and the connections to it. So I still remember I was in Portland in 2005 when they're the first people to paint like a bike lane, like this going over the Hawthorne Bridge. They put down blue paint, and it used to be blue. A lot of people don't realize the first lanes in Portland and a few cities was blue, and then it got replaced with green, Kermit green, because blue became the designated color for the hospitals for coloring pavement.
Mm-hmm.
So then they went to green. So it's kind of neat to see, and that now, what they've done to Hawthorne Bridge. I remember it was riding on the sidewalk. Then it was a painted striped lane. Then they made the concrete on the sidewalk wider. Then they made it wider. Going back, it's kind of really nice to see what they're doing in Portland. I still think, they're obviously leaders, but, there was also that somewhat significant news a few years ago that, like, the number of people on bikes had declined, right? And I think it's now kind of rebounded a little.
Yeah, I found that was a bit, it was controversial in my opinion. I felt like it was disingenuous in a sense. They're like, oh, biking's down. It was like, yeah, everything's down. It was COVID, and there wasn't people commuting as much.
Yeah, and they were also just measuring bikes going into downtown rather than measuring some of the other trips throughout the city. So it was mainly measuring trips in and out of downtown rather than in between neighborhoods on the east side or in between neighborhoods on the west side.
Yeah, but it is great to see like how incredibly far it's rebounded in general, not just in Portland. But as far as New York City goes, they've made incredible strides. I haven't been there in a little while. I think it was June of 2023 is the last time I visited, and I was blown away. I thought it was fantastic, the amount of changes that have been made, because before then, my last visit was in 2007. I think I was a teenager.
Oh boy, yeah, look at that.
So
that was
unrecognizable.
That was right before the first summer streets. We've now had 18 or 19 years of summer streets since then.
Yeah. It's like, I think the biggest change in my brain, the before and after thing was visiting Times Square again. Like it was unrecognizable almost. But what do you think is like the lowest hanging fruit or the most important thing that needs to be changed or implemented in New York's cycling network to make it better?
Well, I gotta say, they just need to do more. I mean, they need to do more. But I've gotten a lot of credit for this because I noticed during COVID that some days there were way more people cycling on the skinny protected lane than there were cars in the 3 lanes of traffic, like on First, Second Avenues and stuff. So I set up a camera and did a traffic count. And now we're seeing, we Streets Blog and Street Films, we really concentrated on that a lot. And so did the advocacy organizations, Transportation Alternatives, Open Plans, Bike New York. And now we're seeing the fruits of that come. Like the last 2 years, we have double wide lanes that, like, sometimes I'm laughing while I'm riding on them because they're building for the future finally. So I think, it's not a criticism so much for New York because I think they're starting to do it, but I think we got to start thinking about the future, because if you look at what Second Avenue number of cyclists that used to be there. And if we didn't make the lanes wider, then we would have to be, we'd be like not seeing as many people ride because it'd be too uncomfortable or too dangerous, or, we have faster cyclists now too. So you need more room with some of the electric bikes and such. So, yeah, I think that's, one thing we just need to be doing more. And especially, to get to the places where like Paris, the Netherlands, Copenhagen, Stockholm, Barcelona, we need to really be, and I know you asked about bicycling, but we really need to be opening up our car-free network. We have some nice things that are going on in Broadway and some pockets in New York, but every street below Canal Street should be almost a pedestrianized street. I mean, Midtown. We should be, you go to the London Theater District and a lot of other places where there's like, a lot of stuff. And you go to Times Square now, Times Square itself, the intersection, the nexus of the streets there where all the people are and the tourism's going on. But you go to the theater in London, you're walking down car-free streets to get to your show. Everything needs to grow outward. And I'd say that's the thing we need to be doing with our DOT.
100%. Yeah. And as you were mentioning Montreal earlier, it's at least one of those places in North America that they're leading the way with car-free streets, not in the same way like they do in Europe and Amsterdam, London, and even in Paris these days, but in a way that helps us realize how valuable this space is and how much we can use of it and how much space cars take up. And even in New York City, some of these boulevards are massive. It's crazy. But yeah, I would love to see more of that in New York City. Because
next, if you come back, I'll take you on a bike ride that you'll just be.
I'll be back for sure, and I will definitely take you up on that.
Yes,
100%. Okay, and I have this one question as you were talking earlier, and I think I'd like to get into it. And I've mentioned this, or I've talked about this with somebody earlier. And as urbanists, and especially people who are focused on micromobility and cycling, are we too focused on the Netherlands? Are we holding up on this pedestal? Are we like Dutch weeaboos, like people obsessed with Japan? Are we like that with the Netherlands? Are we too focused on it, do you think?
They do good stuff.
That's it. You can just quote you there.
I would just say, though, I think that, for example, the Netherlands would never do some of the things that we've done in New York with like center running bike lanes. They have those in DC. They would never do it. And, I don't think it should be done as a rule, but there are some places that we've done center running boulevards in places that really work well. Like, especially like a lot of people like to say, down in Washington, DC, they've got that wonderful center running boulevard. People are like, well, that sucks, because what if you want to go to a store that's, or a restaurant as you're in the middle of the, but you know what? If you're familiar with that area, most of the institutions along it are one gigantic building long. So if you're going to be going to, some museum or whatever, it's not like you have 10 or 12 places to choose. So, you just be going to that's your destination. So you got like this kind of like expressway for bikes that they're in a safe spot, and then you pull off when you need to. And, I think that the Dutch way is a great way, and I think they do great stuff. But I think other people, we shouldn't discount being creative where you can, especially in places that may not have the funding or may not have the experience or may not have the tolerance with the public to do what they do there. So, we kind of got to balance it, I think,
Absolutely. I think I'm just almost finished Wes Marshall's book, Killed by an Engineer, and it's fantastic. It's dense. It's a lot denser than I was expecting. It's really, really good. But one of the things he goes into depth in is how little in North America, not only that engineers do make changes for the better and making streets safer, but that they can't in many ways. And I think that's one thing we really need to take from the Netherlands. It's something they really do well, is they're constantly iterating and constantly trying to make the designs better and safer. And I feel like it's obviously we're hamstrung, or the engineers, at least I'm not an engineer, but the engineers are hamstrung in certain ways where they can't make those changes. And it's really disappointing. But I think we're making moves in that direction. Like I've been talking to a lot of engineers here locally who are really tuned into this stuff. Obviously, there's tons of people who are not. I'm not going to say who it is. Somebody I know well is an engineer in a city in Ontario, and they're the stereotypical. They'd say one of those engineers who he read the books, he reads the manual, he does his job, and then he goes home. He's not passionate about it. It's just his job, and that's totally fine. That's fine. But we need to change the way those people make the streets, because I think that's a big problem.
And I think that, again, going back to the Netherlands and some of the best cities, there are people here who we have a wonderful 34th Avenue open street here. It runs 26 blocks. It happened because of COVID, and cars are still allowed to access most blocks, but they can only go 5 or 10 miles an hour. But the street is filled with people biking and playing basketball, whatever they're doing, and it's wonderful. But there are people that have come to visit it, and they'll say to me, they'll be like, well, why don't you just paint the street red like the Netherlands, and then people will know that this is a pedestrianized street? And it's like, you have to have that environment first. And you have to have a network and a lot of that happening. A red street to somebody here would just be like, I don't know why they painted the street red, but I'm going to go drive down at 30 miles an hour. Like, that's so there's like different levels of it. It's interesting.
Totally. And that's something I've seen a bit when I was in Utrecht last summer, and that's something I saw. I can't remember the name of the canal, but it's kind of the main business district in the middle where there's that beautiful canal with the boats going down and restaurants on both sides, very touristy. But there's just a car going down, the street there when it's packed with pedestrians, but they went really slow. They got through and they left. They had access. Yeah. And it's something I think we in North America a lot of the time don't have this middle ground. And here in Vancouver, there's been this whole fight over a pedestrianized street in Gastown, which is like the old center, cobbled streets, very touristy. And this summer we had 2 months where it was pedestrian only. But now they're only giving us Sundays for 8 hours in the summer. And it's just like, can't we have a middle ground where it's like cars can access if they need to, just go real slow? I think that could be definitely made to happen. But again, will people obey it? That's a whole nother thing. I don't know.
Yeah. And the funny thing is the same thing like Paris. You're on streets in Paris where people aren't supposed to be driving or parking. Every once in a while you see somebody, but that might be somebody that might be the cable guy or a plumber that they have to get there, and people are kind of like fine with that. And that's what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, my kid is behind me. Playing with the cat. All right, take the cat away, Clarence.
It's a cat-friendly podcast. My cats often show up on the stream too.
I don't know what he's doing. That's little Clarence. That's Clarence the third. He's Clarence the third. Okay, Clarence.
I've got one of your recent videos up here. I'm going to just post it up here for people who are watching the stream here. And I absolutely loved it. So this was about City Bike. And
I love how you're going to use this.
It was a myth-busting episode, basically. And it's about the argument saying nobody uses these bikes. Why is nobody using these city bikes? And this is like stuff I love. I love like the myth-busting stuff and investigating on the street, finding evidence. What is the real answer to these questions, right? So why aren't people using City Bike, Clarence? Can you tell us?
They're not using City Bike because you go to the City Bike dock and look, they're all filled up. So I guess nobody's using them. That's
true.
That's basically what all these people are taking photos of, either completely empty or completely full bike stations. And they're not even like hanging around. They're just taking pictures and they're saying we should get rid of City Bike. They're like, nobody uses it. So I went out pretending to be one of these people, kind of knowing that I was going to eventually, have an expert. Like here we are, Kevin Dugan from Streets Blog, who's already did an article on this. And, then I have my friend Bill Bruno come on in a little bit, and he explains how much usage these docks have gotten. And I'll be like, nobody's using this. They'll be like, well, in fact, 411 people use that dock, which is way more than those you know, those parking spaces that were removed, where, you know, if the car moves a few times a day in those spaces, you're still getting way more use with 411 people using 3 parking spaces. There's Bill right there. So.
Yeah, I like the one fact where it was the space that one car would take up would instead move something like 30 or more people a day on these city bikes, which is usually a lot more. There's often, 1.2 people in a car? That's usually the occupancy rate in most passenger vehicles. But it was really cool. That you highlighted this tidal effect that happens with bike share, where a lot of the times people coming into the city in the morning, into the core like Manhattan, and then moving out to the boroughs in the afternoon. Like this wasn't something I noticed when I was in New York, because I used City Bike the whole time I was there. I thought it was amazing. Probably one of the best bike share systems I used in North America. But it was funny, at some of the docks, they were so busy. Like if you go anywhere near Central Park, I would be surprised if you went to the docks any moment and there wasn't somebody there either pushing a bike in or pulling one out.
Yeah, that's true.
Busy.
Oh, yeah. You say that. I do, you know, they're all, because people want to use them and ride in the park too.
Yeah.
So yeah. Like, you know, we just, and I didn't try to pick like the busiest docks. Like, see, this one only has 74 trips per day, but that's still pretty good for 2 or 3 parking spaces, you know. Mm-hmm. But I just was like, got fed up with it one day. There's one 418 per day. And, you know, I got fed up and decided I was going to go on the way home. I just started videotaping standing outside them. And then I asked my friend Bill to look up all the stats. So it's not like I went and said, oh, I'm going to go find the one that has 500 and 800, whatever. I just did, you know, a normal ride home over like 6 miles. So that's, you know, I didn't really plan it out really much more than that. And of course, the integrity. You will have the cranks saying, oh, you're doing this on purpose, or you had people go and remove the bikes on camera for you. And, you know, this is a time lapse done by a friend of mine that in over an hour, Luke. He did this many years ago, but they found that they had almost. Now it was a busy station in near Madison Square, but they had almost 180 uses in just 1 hour. That includes taking a bike out and docking. So, yeah.
All paid actors. Yeah, they're just paid actors.
This is true.
All paid actors. Everybody. It's amazing. Every city you go to, that's what they say.
You see anybody taking transit or riding a bike, that is a paid actor. Soros-backed money.
Yeah. WF is all there behind us. They're paying for our fares and our bikes.
And I started doing this thing. I got sick of it because they'd say, like, I do a traffic count on our open street. I put a camera up for like an hour, and they're like, you told everybody you were going to be there. You know, just all these, like, you know, you arranged it, you paid everybody. And then instead of denying it anymore, the thing that seemed to help change and like mute the conversation and make people laugh was, I was like, well, here's what happens. George Soros comes out and he has like $100 bills, and he will give you a $100 bill. You don't have to be there long, just enough to be on camera. And you also get a free month supply of ice cream. That's what, you know, because that sounds totally ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
And then and then when we had Meyers had his protest in Times Square for congestion pricing, I said that George Soros was standing out there with $200 bills, which of course don't exist. But, you know, when somebody's trying to make a point, you got to make them look like idiots. And it's worked. I've had a number of people say the same thing. They like, oh, yes, sure, it's Soros money. They make up their own stuff, you know.
There's a lot of projection going on. And, you know, this stuff is political, but it seems like, a lot of projection, because we know some people are actually giving out money for their political views and agenda. But it's weird because
Skitch wrote, he's waiting for his paycheck.
She's
waiting
for a paycheck.
Still, look, Willie. Yeah, I keep telling people, like, if what you said is true, we could all be really rich mofos here in New York, like just by going to protests every day.
Yeah, 100%. That'd be.
I know that's why I moved to Portland, because I can just go to all the different protests out here and just keep making the bag, securing the money. Yeah.
It's funny because a lot of this stuff you can bring it forward, you can bring the data, but it doesn't matter. We thought the internet age was going to bring us a new age of enlightenment, but really it's just misinformation and anti-intellectualism that's ruling in a lot of places. It's really sad, but we're
and
trying to fight the good
says
fight.
It wishes it could be monetized. Yeah, that's what we all do. Well, wait, it is. Remember, it is.
It technically is.
We're just lying.
Yeah.
This is all us just trying to throw off the non-believers and the cranks. We're just making this up, but we know that we're all like you guys are all going to get $50 just for chatting, right? And I'm gonna
this is
easy
true.
money, right?
Yeah,
100%,
yeah, easy
all day long. We've got a couple.
It's the best return on investment ever. Our patrons only pay $1 a month, and they get $50 back from the Soros checks.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of which, you can join the show live and join our Discord for just how much? How much, Ethan? How much is it again?
$1
$1 a month. That's like, I don't know, $5 Canadian or something now.
Okay, that's going to be like $10 a month soon enough.
Go to patreon.com/Radio Free Urbanism. So we got a couple things we want to talk about. And I think, Ethan, do you want to bring in your story here?
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably have to go through our stories pretty quickly here.
Yeah.
But
we've been talking.
Yeah, no, we have. Honestly, I think, you know what? We'll just do a quick little run through of my story here. But some news from us out of Massachusetts and the Massachusetts Bay Transit Authority, MBTA, is that they have gotten a new commuter rail line. They've got a new commuter rail line that now adds 6 new stations between Fall River and New Bedford. And these 2 little rail splits of the commuter rail add on some of the first rail service that these cities are going to see within the past 60 years. So it's been nearly half a century since these cities have had any sort of commuter rail service, and now they are once again connected to the MBTA commuter rail network. These projects are super exciting to see. This project opened up a couple weeks ago. We were a little bit late on this coverage, but regardless, still super exciting to see these big transit projects open up.
Absolutely. It's fantastic. More the merrier, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
How fast do we want to go through these stories? As fast as possible?
Well, I mean, if you guys got any more commentary, I mean, at least we covered that little bit. More transit projects, more better.
Yeah, more better.
More
always.
Better. We need
I just want to share
good news.
Yeah, I want to share something that I went to last night. This was not a city council, but kind of a community meeting for people who are running for city council here in Vancouver, BC. And the unelected people who were running were asked questions throughout the night, and they each answered. And one of them was, considering the deficit that TransLink is having right now, I think it's $600 million of operating budget that they're going to be missing next year. And they were asked what might they do to help shore up that budget. And they all gave great answers of possibilities, even as just like fare increases and things like that, different things that we can do to increase, just shore up the gap. But one of the people there, Karen, she had an answer that, it was interesting. And it was kind of a rebuttal to people saying that it's integral to have a good transportation network and cycling and walkability for people who are disabled in some cases or can't drive a car. And this was her reaction, which I'm going to share here. Yeah, so this is something you often hear when we talk about increasing our transit capacity, expanding our cycling network, and making our cities more walkable. They call it a war on cars. And it always comes back to the whole thing of when you're used to privilege, equity feels like oppression. And that's, I think, a great answer to something like this. You see this all the time when people say it's ableist to not want to use the car or saying whatever like that. But the point is that when people are pushing for transit, people are pushing for better cycling and walkability. It's not about destroying the car necessarily, although we did talk earlier in the show about having more car-free streets. It's about expanding accessibility, including the car. You know what? I drove in the Netherlands. It was probably the best place I've ever driven in my whole life, right? But it's also incredibly good with transportation as far as trains go, buses and trams, and the cycling is obviously very good. That's just my piece I wanted to say to that, because it was very frustrating.
I would say that, like, there's a lot of people who say, here in response to anything we try to do that's good, this isn't the Netherlands, this isn't Copenhagen. And I'm like, I once did a montage of video of showing a lot of people on bikes and a lot of cars behind them and a lot of cars on the roads. And, it's not like there's an absence of cars in any of those places. They're just restricted to some areas, or you're paying to use them, or you have some reason that you're able to be exempt to doing something. And here in New York City, congestion pricing is like a big thing when the people are saying, you're against people going to the hospital or their doctor's appointment, or they're poor. All this stuff is against those people. It's like, those are such a small percentage of the people driving. We're actually making it beneficial to all those people, because now they can get where they need to go and faster, and they can have more options. So it's tough. It's tough because I do understand how people get a little upset about it, but there's also people that use that as a wrench to try to stop progress, and we shouldn't be doing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we also can't forget about, how transit is actually a lot more accessible at the end of the day than dealing with car-based infrastructure. We're talking about a whole range of different, abilities of people on how to get themselves around. And at the end of the day, transit is a lot more accommodating than your average car. I mean, there's even a reason why paratransit services exist, is to help people get around their communities in a much more affordable way than having someone shuttle them in their car. Because it's just all about managing, this wonderful system that we have here and making it accessible for all. And having that transit and that cycling and that pedestrian infrastructure investments that we need to give to our cities is just one way that we can answer that solution, rather than just making everybody drive around. There's this wonderful saying, is that I believe it comes down to the DOTs, I believe, where if you have a hammer, then every solution looks like a nail. It's just the one tool for the job is what our DOTs have been focusing on in North America for the most part. And having that, ability to use different tools for different jobs is what we need here more than ever.
Absolutely. Yeah. 100% agree. And this is something that I see a lot. I made a video about Houghton, the 15-minute city, the quintessential 15-minute city. And a lot of the times I've seen comments where they're like, hey, it'd be a lot better if they opened up the streets better for cars so that you didn't have to go these circuitous routes like you showed in Ghent in your tour there. And it's like, sure, but now they don't think about the traffic patterns and how many more cars that would end up there. And then if you just keep going down that narrative, you end up just like any other city where everything is spread out farther, and you end up traveling the same amount of time, and instead of just driving around that circuitous route, making this dense city where you could just walk or bike if you want to or can. It's I got to figure out how to analogize that so it's very simple and straightforward for people to understand, because I don't think a lot of people get that. The big changes that happen. But anyway, let's keep moving on. Clarence, I got to ask you about congestion pricing. So we talk about congestion pricing on the show quite often. So people know about it. I just want to know what your experience has been with congestion pricing and its implementation.
I got to say, it's funny because, going into congestion pricing starting, I was really at a loss. How am I going to measure this? I would have to have a team of 100 cameras all around the city, before footage, and then but if you're filming in, November, December, or September, how are you going to compare that in January when it's cold and things are different? So I really was like, people are asking me, what are we going to do? And it's amazing how the advocacy community found ways to measure this. And it started out with anecdotes. And I'll give you an example. We drive in Queens to go see my family in Goshen, New York, which is in Orange County. It usually takes about coming back, especially, we always go like on a Saturday, Sunday, or a holiday, and coming back always around 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's a constant. And the fastest I think we had ever gotten back in a trip was an hour 23. And I think it was the second Sunday of congestion pricing. It was like an hour 17 door to door. Like that had like, I can't tell you, like, it's like, it was incredible. Like I was laughing while we were in the car and looking at the time projection, and all the roads were green. And then luckily I taped ourselves going over the George Washington Bridge. And it was the first time there's been times where it's been good, but there's always a slowdown, or the cars are going all at 10 miles an hour. There was no slowdown, nothing. And there was so much anecdotally happening about that. People talking about how quiet their neighborhoods were, how it was easier to cross the street, that there's less pollution. And all these things have been borne out now over the last 2 months with actual real data. We've got numbers that say that there's more tickets have been sold on Broadway at the same period last year. And so you're like, okay, maybe not a lot more, but they didn't go down, which is what everybody thought was going to happen. So it's been great to see. I mean, you could be at rush hour down near the Holland Tunnel, and I have a video with Doug Gordon of the War on Cars, of him standing in a sea of cars. And that has not happened at all since congestion pricing. Like it's, and I think I told you guys earlier, a lot of things have been focusing on, like, the number of people on transit is up. The number of cars entering the city are down. The travel times for cars are better. The buses are running faster. Kids are getting to school faster. Some of the MTA buses, they're going to change their timing because the bus drivers are sitting at a stop for 2 minutes before they leave again because they're so far ahead of their original timetables. So, there's all this really good news, but the one thing they didn't get right was actually good news, is that they predicted that there would be traffic tie-ups and pollution and environmental concerns in the South Bronx and in some parts of Jersey. And, so we were like, okay. And there were a lot of the angry congressmen and local electeds in those areas saying, this isn't fair. We're going to suffer. And, we were kind of like cognizant of that, that might happen, or there might be some places that see, some detrimental effect. And actually, last week they published a study showing that actually didn't even happen. There's no extra pollution. There's no extra backup. So I think it's all thumbs up. And I think our governor and most of our leaders are determined to fight the Trump administration. And to be honest, if it goes to a court case, the city and the state have a huge chance of prevailing. So they keep saying, filling us with threats like, oh, we're going to come in there and make you stop congestion pricing. Oh, we'll give you 1 more month now. Oh, now Hochul and Trump are talking. They're having regular conversations. I think there's going to be some kind of bargain at some point where he wants a gas pipeline to go through New York State, some spot. I think he'll eventually be like, we're going to back off if you give us that. I think that's what's going to happen.
He's finding the bargain, right? It's the art of the deal, as he says.
Yeah.
Well, it's great to hear. Like it sounds like, it sounds like an unmitigated success. It's incredible to see, especially those failed predictions is something that I didn't even think was going to happen. So that's so great. I'm so happy to hear that.
Even my doctor takes a bus from Jersey and said that he gets in a half hour faster. Like, you can't even measure like how much time in your life you're getting back. People from there's restaurant people that drive in from Jersey who like own restaurants and are like, oh, I could never go back to it being, the way it was because I'm enjoying paying $6 or $9 extra and I'm getting an hour of my life back every day.
Yeah. That's a good deal.
You get to see your kids. You get to do more things.
Oh, yeah.
Less stress, all of this stuff.
A lot of people would take that deal, right? It's incredible.
Yeah.
We got to wrap up the show. We got 2 quick questions from the audience we'll go through. So if you want to send us any questions, hit it on YouTube or go to radiofreeurbanism@gmail.com. You can send us a question. So this first one is from Jen Hall. Ethan, would you like to read this question?
Absolutely. And so Jen Hall, who is in the chat, asks, Alex is gone. Time to talk behind his back. What's one of your favorite things that Alex has talked about? probably for too long on the podcast.
The Green Line.
I'd have to agree. The Green Line is the quintessential Alex topic on this show.
Yeah.
I'm going to say the Green Line just to back you guys up.
All right.
You know
It's
what?
unanimous.
You know what? I got to add in another honorable mention. Anything that has to do with Alberta Rail.
Yes.
With the high-speed rail between Edmonton and Calgary. Anything that has to do that.
Austin said, should have specified not the Green Line. Anything. Yeah. All right, we got another question here from Matt Montgomery. The broad public takes potholes as a sign of government dysfunction. You guys know that it is in fact a I can never say this word, Sisyphean task to keep up with the build out of past generations. Sisyphean's like trying to stay in shape, right? Like you just have to keep working at it.
It's pushing the boulder up the hill.
Learning how to play guitar. You got to keep playing anyway. Yeah. What do you think is more a more true sign of a dysfunctional governance, local or higher? Does anybody have any answers? This is quite the question.
This is.
I even asked before because I was like, I don't know. I'm not sure. What I'm trying.
I mean, everything starts at the lower level.
Yeah.
So I mean, if something's wrong at the local government, then everything's going to actually go up to our state and then federal level, or state and provincial and then federal level. So I see it more or less as, I honestly, it's an interestingly phrased question.
Yeah.
I don't know how to probably answer it.
How about dysfunction? Like I would say, there's politicians and people that are in your corner. And then there's the ones that are like always like trying to find the middle ground. And I would say maybe the dysfunction is listening to these loud, cranky, complaining people about everything and not like just, presenting them facts or saying you're wrong or no, this is good for us. Almost like the person you just had on your soundbite, your audio clip. It's like, we need to tell people why these things are good and we shouldn't like try to find the middle ground. Because that's not a good place to go. You really need to be straightforward, and we want to make progress, and we want our cities to be better. We want our lives to be better. And most of these things we're talking about are going to tremendously make them better.
Fact-based policy, right? Actually get to the brass of it, right? Figure it out. Yeah. I was going to say corruption in the form of bribing, which is basically
we're famous.
The United States
we're famous for that in New York now.
Not working. Yeah.
Hey, we call it lobbying here. Yeah. We don't call it bribing.
Whoa. Yeah, it's
we have a proper name for our corruption. We try to sugarcoat it.
I'm sure it exists here too in Canada. We just kind of hide it right now. It just seems so blatant in the United States. It's really scary right now. But anyway,
yeah, it is.
We should end the show. We're getting to an hour here, and I don't want to keep Clarence too long. So, Clarence, this is the end of the show, and this is the point where you can shout out anything you like. So please go ahead.
Oh, like about the world or
channels, book recommendations, anything,
or whatever you like.
Well, I like Mark Wagenborough's Bicycle Dutch. He just put up a video about 2 or 3 weeks ago that I missed, and I saw it today, and I promoted it. It has before and after of Utrecht. Somebody driving through Utrecht in the 90s, I think, and then he shows the exact same streets. And I'm a big lover of before and after, so I would say go to Bicycle Dutch and find that film. It's pretty awesome.
That's fantastic. And where can everybody find you if they want to find your work?
The simple thing is I now have a working website again. It wasn't for a long time. Just streetfilms.org. You could go there and you'll see the last dozen films are posted up there and some news items. And of course, Radio Free Urbanism will be a news item by tomorrow because I'll be putting the podcast up. But if you just go to YouTube and click Street Films, type in Street Films, there's 1,111 films I've made. Probably about 700 or 800 are up on that channel. Some of the earliest stuff back before we didn't have YouTube or Vimeo or Instagram or TikTok. I could just go through it all. Not all of it is up there.
Yeah.
But
it's incredible.
I still remember when we had a website and we had to had an expert come in and condense the video into 240 by 180 pixels, and then you could watch it.
It like loads like
crazy.
one line at a time.
Yes.
Those were the days. Yeah. Well, Clarence, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. I'm so happy to finally meet you. And I do look forward to taking a ride with you in New York City. It's going to happen. And if you're ever in Vancouver, BC, same thing. I can give you a tour of the city.
I haven't been to Vancouver.
Same thing with Portland, your Clarence.
Okay. Well, there is some stuff happening. There.
Two good cities. Two good cities.
Hit us both at the same time. All right. My name is Nick Laporte. You can find me at Nick the Door on YouTube, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Ethan, where can the good people find you?
The good people can find me at Climate and Transit on pretty much any platform that is out there. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I want to thank our guest Clarence today, and I also want to thank our patrons who have been watching us live. Austin, Jen, Willie, and Skitch have all been in the live chat, going crazy, adding in their own messages. And if you want to join that live chat or get other features like access to our Discord and a whole bunch of other wonderful things, you can join our Patreon for just $1. Folks, once again, thank you so much for watching Radio Free Urbanism. And as always, train bad, car good.
Wait a minute. What?
What?
You did it backwards. 2 wheels